Get any more than one person on there.
Yes.
Is everybody okay if I start the meeting?
Yep, it's after 6.
Okay. I'll call the meeting to order, and due to the federal and state emergency declarations, the governor executive order to stay at home and guidance limiting person-to-person contact due to COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting of the Montevideo School Board is being conducted in accordance with Minnesota State Statutes 13D.021, meetings by telephone or other electronic means. Due to the pandemic, it has been determined that it is not feasible for all board members to be physically present at a regular meeting location, and that it is not feasible for the public to attend at the regular meeting location. The superintendent of schools will be present at the regular board meeting location. Persons may monitor the meeting from a location by going to the following link. www.youtube.com channel. Oh, I can't even read it all. You can get the website from Dr. Heller. School board members are reminded to mute their microphone or phone when not speaking. School board members wishing to speak should raise their hand and be recognized by the chair. When recognized, the board member should unmute their microphone, speak, and then mute their device. All votes will be conducted by roll call vote. Each school board member should wait until their name is called before voting. Person monitoring the meeting from a remote location may submit comments through the following email address. Address the board at montevideoschools.org. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Access to the recording will be made available on the district's website as soon as reasonable possible. Roll call. Kelly.
Here.
Maggie.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Andrew.
Present.
And Darren is present. Travis is not present, that was what I understand. So, Dr. Heller.
Yes.
Principal Hickey.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Principal Huntley.
Here.
Principal Gray.
Present.
Principal Sprung.
Here.
Student Representative Marty.
Here.
And Dr. Heller, I'm guessing there's no media at the meeting?
There is no media here.
Okay, thank you. Approval of agenda. Does anyone want to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Maggie.
That was Kelly.
Oh, Kelly, sorry.
It's okay.
Anybody want a second?
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
Darren is an aye, so it passes unanimously. Special presentation, board training, and Dr. Bob Gray, activities director, is going to show a video, Why We Play.
Maybe. So you should have on your screen, my screen, which is a picture of our logo along with the logo for Why We Play. Each year when we join the high school league in the spring for the following school year, we're required to go through a PowerPoint and video presentation. I believe this is the 4th year. It's the 2nd year of this specific one, so this will be familiar to those of you who were here last year. What's the purpose? The purpose of high school activities is the human development of students and connecting them with caring adults in their learning in their community. It's not about some of the things that we often talk about.
By the time students reach middle school, their families have already spent an incredible amount of time, energy, and resources on their child's sports experiences.
Private coaches, tryouts, travel tournaments, and increasing pressure to specialize in a single sport at an early age.
The reality is less than 3% of our athletes will ever go on to play college, and less than 1% of our athletes will ever play professionally.
This means 97% of students will have a terminal experience. When they graduate, their competitive playing days are over. So what's the purpose?
The purpose is the human growth and development of our students and connecting them to caring adults in their learning community.
For this to happen, it takes leadership and a community aligned around this purpose. The purpose of a caring adult in students' lives has never been more important. Students face an incredible amount of pressure. There's peer pressure and social pressure and academic pressure and pressure to perform on the playing field or in the arts area. And what that's resulting in is a mental health crisis where kids are facing anxiety and depression. There's a study called Hardwired to Connect that identifies 3 fundamental needs that every human being has. The need to belong, the need to have some type of moral development, and we define moral as relationships to other people, and then that base community, which is really being held accountable to a set of expectations and boundaries. Athletic and activity programs can really provide a caring community for students. It's a place for them to be connected.
1, 2, 3, 4.
It takes leadership to intentionally create connections and to create a culture that supports students in a caring community.
My purpose statement is to coach to create a love of the game and foster community and growth among our student athletes.
Shift your weight forward and backward. Good. The AD is the front-facing public person that's really leading the charge for all of the things that happen within that program that, again, are so beneficial to the student.
A strong activities director, athletic director is going to have the pulse of their school, is going to influence and impact the students through others and create that experience that we're looking for all kids.
In my particular role as the activities director, I call it leading from the middle out. I need to work with my principal and my superintendent, and I need to work with my school board to understand what purpose-based activities are, what they look like, what they should feel like with our student athletes. And then I need to train coaches, work with athletes, work with our student body.
The value of a strong activities director for the entire system is something that I can't put a price tag on. We've got 3 brand new board members. And it's important for school board members to understand the purpose of our activities and athletic programs so that they remember their role in supporting our work and supporting our staff and in supporting our activities director and what he does.
There you go. We are really here to change the arc of every athlete's life. I think the most important thing I do is connect students to each other, connect students to the school day, connect students to meaningful adults.
We want to win a state tournament. We want to have a winning record. But what's most important than that is having a winning culture.
It's all about the student experience, and that doesn't necessarily equate to winning, but that equates to being able to walk away saying, I had fun, I got better, I did the best that I could, I want to continue, I know more about myself, and I'm more prepared for whatever might come my way in the future.
We have to align our communities in order for athletic administrators and coaches to be supported.
Our school board knows that we're about more than just wins and losses, that we're part of the educational program and part of the educational system. It's great to be able to show up at work every day knowing that you're supported by your school board, your superintendent, and your principal, and that you have the ability to support your coaches athletes, participants, and their families. It's very important that you have all of those important stakeholders in alignment and that they understand what the common language is and what it means to have a successful experience.
My purpose as a captain is to use the sport of baseball to help teach life lessons that'll help people down the road.
The adults are purposeful and deliberate about engaging with students about something bigger than themselves. I may do it in my social studies classroom by teaching history, and I may then later do it in my role as a softball coach. But the experience of the kids get that alignment that is tied through is that we are here to impact your life in a positive way.
There's no more rewarding feeling for me as an activities director to hear them say that they became a better person through their participation in our activities.
I think the greatest thing that a school board can do is to define success, to publicly state that here's how we are going to define success within our school community. Are we growing and developing better people? Are we modeling the kind of character that we want our students to leave our school communities with and go into the world with? Awareness is critical. We have to be aware of the purpose of why sports are a part of our school community. And finally, not only do we have to hold our coaches accountable, we have to hold our school communities accountable to the transformative power of what sport can be, and that is connecting students to caring adults in their learning community.
So leaders of learning are there to develop a common language, not just in Montevideo, but across the state of Minnesota. And we need to talk about our purpose, not just our goals. The whole list of stakeholders that they showed, and you'll see that again here in a little bit, needs to be aligned in talking about the same purpose. And I'll use that word a lot, purpose. We have goals. So there's the stakeholders, and you've already seen that once, but that's a lot of people that need to get on board to drive this thing in the same direction and move forward the way we want it to. We do need to talk about goals. Goals is a part of it. Goals is an outcome. Goals is something we achieve, and purpose is something that is the reason for why we do what we do. The goal is to win, absolutely. Like the one superintendent said, we want to win state titles. It would be great to win 18 state championships every year. That's certainly a goal. That's an outcome that we strive for. We prepare, we plan, we practice, we play to win. But winning is not our purpose. Winning is a goal. Our purpose is teaching and learning, human growth and development, and connecting students to caring adults. That's why we exist. My purpose as the activities director at Montevideo is to develop coaches and athletes that are responsible for their decisions and actions. They're reliable, they compete with integrity, and they treat others with respect. That's my purpose. We had to write our purpose statement about 6 years ago, each of us individually. Some coaches wrote that one coach says their purpose is for coaching is to instill respect, integrity, and compassion to youth through sport. Another coach says, I coach to provide kids a fun environment, to learn new things, and to learn about themselves. And a third one, my purpose is to treat kids fairly, showing enthusiasm and demonstrating integrity in all that I do. Each one of our coaches has a purpose statement that they wrote. And out of the 38 of them, none of them talk about winning. They all talk about, again, human growth and development, making societal, productive citizens to move forward. As a department, we did a little exercise about 4 or 5 years ago where they got to put dots on one of the core values. They each got 3 dots. At the end, 11 of our coaches chose integrity, 10 chose perseverance, and 7 chose responsibility. Those are the 3 highest vote-getting words, I guess, if I had to call it that. So from there, we wrote a department purpose statement that says, our purpose is to develop responsible young men and women who act with integrity when no one is looking, persevering when the road of life presents challenges. And we've put that on our scoreboards now. We've put that in our programs. So that's always there. It's always the first thing when I send out an email to coaches. That's one thing they see when we have a coaches meeting. That's on the screen when they walk in to sit down. So that's why we exist. That's why we show up every day. Finally, how do you define success? Joe Ehrman is the author of the book Inside Out Coaching, which is where Why We Play began. And he states that you can't say that his purpose is to help boys become men of empathy and integrity who will lead, be responsible, and change the world for good, and then define success by his win-loss record. And I guess that's my stance too, is we can't define our success by wins and losses. We can define them by what our kids turn out to be as they leave Montevideo High School. So the challenge becomes, as a community of all of those stakeholders in Montevideo, how do we collectively and publicly define success for our school community here in Montevideo? And that concludes that PowerPoint. Any questions? Like I said, we have to go through that before we can adopt the membership to the high school. It's an annual event.
Right. And that's later in our agenda, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Okay. 1.4.2, we need to recognize and approve staff for tenure. Dustin Boyum, Brenda Jans Darling. Now I'm having fun. Rocio Falace. I'm not sure. Shelby Monahan. Madison Sletta. And Derek Webb. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept them, approve them for tenure?
So move, Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. So we passed unanimously again, and they will be approved for tenure. Okay. Approval of consent agenda. Oh, address the board. We don't have anybody, I don't think. 1.6, approval of consent agenda. Do you want to move on consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll do a roll call vote again. Andrew?
Aye.
Kelly?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Maggie?
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. So we passed unanimously. Consent agenda. Fundraising approvals. 1.6.6. Can we have a motion?
Darren,
Yeah.
you're on 1.7.
Oh, sorry. Resolution accepting a gift donation contribution is 1.7. Randy Van Gorp donation for senior t-shirts. Montevideo Granite Falls Co-op Cenex. Robin Endleson donated pizza for the senior banquet and a banner. Dwayne Olafson of the Eagle Tax Service for distributing senior t-shirts. And community education, Watson Lions Club donated $100 to individuals with disabilities. So do we have a motion adopting resolution accepting the gifts?
So moved. Maggie Kluber.
Thank you, Maggie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, We'll have a roll call vote again. Andrew,
Aye.
Kelly,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Maggie,
Aye.
and Darren is an aye. So passed unanimously again. So 1.8 superintendent's report. Dr. Heller, you're out. You got the floor.
Thank you. A number of items. First of all, the year-end meeting that will be held at 6 p.m. on Monday, June 29th. At that meeting, we'll do the annual designations and take organizational actions. We'll also approve all of the budgets and the long-term facility maintenance plan. And then there'll be some other items that can't wait until the end of July or until the August board meeting, anything that needs to typically be acted on in July, but then there will be no July meeting. A legislative update for fiscal year 21, which we'll be moving into on July 1st. There's no change in the formula aid from what the legislature passed a year ago. So our formula aid will go up by 2%. They are recommending that we give consideration to the next 3 fiscal years beyond that when we're doing our budgeting to fiscal year 22, 23, and 24, because they're anticipating that given the economic conditions, it could be some lean times coming up in the next few years. And that becomes important when we start looking at particularly about increases in staffing, because those magnify their impact so quickly. Federal recovery funding, word is coming out on that, and Mr. Sprung and I will be attending a webinar on that later this week. The federal recovery funding is based on our level of title funding. So it's really tied into our free and reduced lunch or our level of poverty. It's also tied into our level of special education students. We can use the federal recovery money where we need it. There's a lot of latitude given to us. We'll have somewhere in the vicinity of about $198,000 in that area. They recommend that we look first at technology. And with technology, what they're suggesting is we take a look at how we can make sure that we've got connectivity for all of our students should we have to continue on with distance learning. This year that just ended, the last 2 months of the year, we had 100% connectivity with all of our students. However, many of those were students that were within the city of Montevideo and that were on charter, and charter was providing free access to internet services during that time. So we had about 60 families, I believe it was, that at that point were able to get internet service for their kids so that they could have that capacity as we went through distance learning. We don't know that that capacity will be there as we move into the school year this fall or even throughout the school year coming up. And so that's one of the areas that they're recommending we take a look at utilizing some of that federal funding for. Another suggestion that they're making or recommendation is that we look at using it for summer school. However, we kept our summer school with a distance learning format, as did many of the schools throughout our region. And then finally, they suggest that we take a look at mental health services, because that's really a growing need and a need that was really intensified during the time of distance learning. So those are recommendations. However, a school district does have quite a bit of latitude to utilize the funding as they see best fit. The next item I'd like to mention is the selection of the next student representative for the school board. We have interviews set up for 1:30, and 2 o'clock this coming Wednesday. We do need one board representative to serve on the committee. It will be done remotely.
Unfortunately, we'll work with. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, I think I can do that.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You'll send me a Zoom or something?
Yes, we will get that link sent out.
Dr. Heller,
Yes.
can I ask you a question about the topic you just described about the federal relief funding? When would we start having some framework that the board could review on what our plans are related to spending those dollars?
We are just getting now the format for what that is, and we should have recommendations ready by the end of the week, and we could review some of those at the retreat and definitely by the end of year meeting.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Administrative team retreat will be June 15th through the 17th. I'll have the agenda out both to administrators, and I'll send a copy to the school board midweek. The school board retreat beginning on the afternoon of the 17th with the webinar with the presentation from the Trust Edge company. And then the retreat will continue on through the morning of the 19th. And that agenda also will be ready by midweek. We will find a way to make it available remotely for any who can't make the meeting. The MSBA Summer Seminar in the first part of August will be a virtual meeting. The MASA MDE Back to School Conference, August 11th and 12th. They're still working on what the format will be for that particular webinar, but that is where they will definitely go over with everyone what it is they're looking at for the start of the school year. So we will try to have as many of our personnel participate in that as we can. And then finally, I want to mention Chromebooks. We are expanding to grades 4 and 5, the grade levels that will be able to take Chromebooks home with them on a daily basis this coming year. So that particular group then will also fall into the insurance category for the Chromebooks, like the rest of our students have as we've moved forward with that. As we move also into the start of the new school year, it remains to be seen what the format is for the school year. However, if we start out in distance learning, we will want to have devices in the hands of all of our students from the very start of the school year. And so that's something where we'll probably need to be doing some discussion about how we want to approach overall insurance if we're looking at the possibility of the Chromebooks being out in all of the Chromebooks out in general distribution for the entire year or for the better part of the entire year. So that is something that we will have on the agenda for discussion both at the retreat and at the end of the year meeting. And those are the items that I have for my report.
Thank you, Dr. Heller. there any questions for Dr. Heller?
Sure, I just have a quick one. How are we doing on staffing, Luz or Dr. Eller?
I believe we have most of our positions filled. We're in the process of filling the last of our custodial positions. I know that we didn't have it on the agenda yet for today, but I know Sean just hired a band instructor for the middle school. So we are getting most of our positions are getting filled.
Thank you.
Okay, 1.9 committee reports. Health and safety, Kelly?
Okay, let's see. I'm not very prepared. I don't really remember what we talked about. We had a Zoom meeting. Adam, if you don't mind jumping in, help me. What did we talk about? You said goodbye to Mary for last meeting.
Oh, okay.
Mary Moore.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we had a meeting in May, and it was remotely. Went over the OSHA log as we normally do. We had only had one claim or one incident at that time. Mary gave an update on the wellness committee meeting from March 4th. They focused on the wellness policy that they've been working on that got delayed a little bit with COVID, but will be addressed in the fall. Wellness incentive program. I think we had over 100 staff members complete the wellness incentive program, and it ended up with a $500 incentive per employee, and we received $56,000 to be distributed out to employees for that wellness incentive. Went over the integrated pest management plan, how we control pests, both weeds and rodents, other pests in the district. And then went through the middle school and Sanford walkthroughs that we had and both of those were overall good. A couple storage issues that were addressed as far as excessive or inappropriate storage, too close to the ceiling, etc. Talked about the coronavirus updates at that time. And then
We also talked about the Fine Arts Center.
correct. And then the Fine Arts Center, the concerns of that building and how we'll move forward addressing some of those concerns. And then we set the meeting dates for next year.
Thanks, Adam.
Hey, Adam,
Yep.
the wellness incentive, the $500 an employee, how is that funded? Is that something it's self-funded, or is there some sort of
Funded by Southwest West Central.
Yep. So it's through our health insurance pool through the Southwest West Central Service Co-op, and it's comes out of the reserves from the program, the money that comes back in, and it's eligible to all members, school district members, and the other side of the cities, counties. But it's a program, it's offered, so we offer a wellness program. There's money for program dollars for administering the program.
Yeah.
And then there's also money available for members as an incentive that they can use to either reduce their premium or...
And some of it comes from drug rebates, doesn't it, Adam?
Correct. That's the most of it, the drug rebates that come back in to the co-op from the insurance providers.
Okay.
Congratulatory item, action and recognition.
Hold on, we gotta go back.
Oh, I'm sorry, you guys. Back to negotiations. Andrew, Joe, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly and I had the first meeting with the custodial group just last week. So just got things, it was an opening discussion, just talk through any minor issues. And, we did see an initial financial proposal from the unit that we're working through. we'll need to get some time with the board to get board direction on how we should, kind of rules and regulations that the board would like from, lack of better term, spending authority, right, for these contracts. We haven't done that yet. And, the custodians are out ahead of the curve, but we've got an upcoming meeting with another unit next week, I believe. And so we'll need to get a little bit of time from the board just to get direction. There's like Dr. Heller highlighted earlier that, we don't know what the next 3 years are going to look like. So, strategies around length of contract and a few other things are things that we need some direction on. And I think historically we've done that in a closed session. So we just have to arrange that in the near future. Probably the next opportunity is really the end of the year meeting, I think. I don't know how a closed session works in this format either, but.
Right. Okay.
Did I miss anything, Kelly? Okay.
Principal Gray.
So I'm going to do the sandwich method with you, which is how they tell us to teach kids. So I'm going to start out with some positive news. The high school league and the governor and the Department of Health, Department of Education have opened up that we can start doing some activities beginning as early as June 15th with our high school athletes. Because our buildings are actually closed until the end of June, those activities will have to be done off-site, and there are a few coaches doing some kind of small things, little groups, 2 or 3, maybe some individual stuff. And then starting July 1st, we'll be able to offer some summer rec activities for as many grades as we can. And right now, with the schedule we've kind of looked at, we're able to do things starting at 5th grade is all we have time for. We still have to stay in groups of 10 or less. Indoors, which is a good share of what we do. Outdoors, we can do 25. So we've got some plans for all of our athletics to offer things for starting at grades 5. And then we've got some other things for the kids younger than grade 5 that don't use our gyms or fields, that we can do some other things. So that should be coming out early to mid next week to parents to be able to sign up for some summer rec activities. So that's to me, that's a big step forward from doing absolutely nothing since March 13th. The middle piece is always the negative piece, and that's the child care update, where beginning March 13th and ending June 30th, we lost $132,000 in revenue. That's what I would call a butt kicking. In that, Tricia Lean, our child care coordinator, has found $27,500 in grants that we've already received. So that brings it down to 105. We do have some fund balances in a couple of funds. The ECFE fund and the school readiness fund both have fund balances that we have been given permission by the Department of Ed to do some shuffling of monies to help cover the cost of childcare. So we're right now looking at how much of that we're going to be able to shuffle to make that loss a little less hurtful. And then the last positive is kindergarten registration, remotely, virtually, whatever you want to call it. Chris Johnson did a fabulous job of contacting families. We have 122 kindergartners registered for next fall. That's a great problem to have. That is beyond full. That will be the second largest by, I think, one child kindergarten class we've had. The difference is the biggest class we had ended at 123, started at 112 or 13. This one's starting at 122. If we get that 6 to 8 move-ins last minute, oh crap, school started, I better bring my kindergartner to school. We're gonna be at 130, which in 5 sections is maybe a little too full. That's 26 per classroom for kindergarten. Again, it's a problem, but it's a good problem. Having too many kids is way better of an issue than having not enough kids. So those are my 3 items, and I did the positive, negative, positive like we're supposed to.
Thank you.
Bob.
Andrew.
On the bad stuff in the middle of the sandwich on the child care, you called out the revenue miss, basically the people paying, but did we have lower expenses to offset some of that miss too? I mean, or are you saying that that's the what you actually reported was actually the cost that we did not get covered.
We had no change in expenses. We had to provide childcare yet. We had to provide childcare free from March 13th to the end of the school year. And then now our problem is we have less kids, about half as many kids in the summer as we normally would, and we have to be in groups of 10 or less. And normally we would run groups of 16 to 18, especially with the older kids. So we've had to hire the same amount of staff. So our expenses have stayed steady. They haven't changed a bit. We've just lost revenue.
Well, thank you, Bob.
Okay.
Principal Sprung.
Good evening. I take the opportunity to talk about how we ended the year with distance learning. I haven't had the opportunity to talk to the board since we ended. My year-end meetings with staff, all of them felt that it went really well. And as I was talking to parents and kids, I have the same impression. Of course, there have been some things that we're going to do differently if we have to do it again. But we focused on trying to identify both what made it go well and what things we might change if we have to do it again. First of all, one of the things that, a couple of things that jumped right out there is we had the devices. And kids knew how to use the devices. So when we sent them home with kids, we were able to do online learning. Secondly, our staff has had the training. They had to do some training at the end just to tweak some skills. They had the ongoing training that allowed them to be able to do this. And then the third thing that really jumped up open for us is when we approach this, we approach it by, first of all, maintaining relationships and then holding high expectations for student work. And the big thing that really made us evident is maintaining relationships with kids. That allowed us to hold high expectations. The other thing, some things that also helped was the upfront planning time to get ready and the midpoint planning time after we had done this a month or so, to do some more planning with staff to be ready to go. As we look at the possibilities of having a different kind of start, those are the things I want to keep in mind at the end of the school year. First and foremost would be we're all going to have kids we don't have relationships with, and seeking out ways to build relationships in a different manner than what we would normally do will be important for us. But again, I'll end with the sandwich. Online learning went extremely well, much better than what we thought it was going to do when we started. For the bulk of kids, there are some kids that we talked about needing to do something differently next time around. But when we talk about this, it's going really well.
Well, good.
Any questions, thoughts? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bill. 1.10, congratulatory actions and recognition. The following individuals are being recognized for their accomplishments. Floyd Arnold Award, Sullivan Hernandez. Alice Anderson, Megan Earp. VFW, Most Dedicated Improved, Tegan Marty and Connor Osmond. Marine Corps Distinguished Athlete, Kate Weber and Kelsey Maurice. Coaches Association, Scholar Athlete, Kaylee Pauling and Jackson Envelson. Academics, Arts and Athletics, Tegan Marty and Tyler Johnson. 3-sport athlete, Megan Earp, Brenna Fold, Sullivan Hernandez, Tegan Marty and Tyler McKee. Bryce Nelson, Sam Olson, Connor Osmond, Ashton Pauling, Kaylee Pauling, and Kate Weber. Anybody want to make a motion to recognize these action and recognition for their accomplishments?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Anybody want a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll have a roll call vote again. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye. Sorry.
Darren is an aye. We are passing unanimously again. 2.0 discussion items. Dr. Heller, do you want to take us through that?
Okay, 2.1 is the first reading of the annual board policies. The following list of policies need annual school board approval. Generally speaking, there are seldom any changes in most of these policies. The policies were attached, but they include the FMLA policy, harassment and violence, mandated reporting of child neglect, mandated reporting of maltreatment from vulnerable adults, student discipline, bullying prohibition, student sex non-discrimination, internet applicable use and safety policy and email policy and Chromebook policy, acceptable use policy for grades 4 through 12 and employees, acceptable use policy for elementary, and school district accountability system crisis management.
Thank you, Dr. Eller.
Yep.
And this will be on our agenda of next month to approve?
Yes, at the end of the year meeting.
Thank you. Survey results, bond referendum. Todd Rapp Strategies Incorporated. Are they going to be here next time?
He's here now.
Oh, he is. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If a few of you could raise your hands so I know you can hear me, that'd be helpful. Terrific. At the conclusion of the referendum in April, we talked with Dr. Heller, and one of the conclusions that we drew was that we could use some data from local residents just to try to figure out what happened there. As you may know, referendum had been somewhat successful in other parts of the upper Midwest, even during COVID-19. The Mora School District passed on their fifth attempt, their $60 million new high school. And in Wisconsin, they had an amazing record of 51-8 during their April primary. So we wanted to take a look and just see what had happened and whether answer the question of whether we missed the mark completely on the plan, or were there other things that affected this election. So what we chose to do was an online survey. I think the cost to the school district was whatever advertising needed to be spent, but the Rapp Strategies took care of the maintenance of the survey. We did the design of it. If we had chosen to do a telephone survey of a scientific sample, it would have cost about $13,000 to do. So I think our decision was, let's just get some input right now. And if later on the school board wants more detailed information, maybe something more rigorous, we can discuss whether to do a telephone survey or not. We had 657 people attempt to take the survey. 151 of them were not residents of the Montevideo School District. It's likely most of them are taxpayers here, but don't reside here. They were kicked out. We were only focused on voters. That left us with 506 district residents, of which 466 of them took the entire survey. Splitting them down into different categories, and I've included that in a written report that I provided to Dr. Heller, but about 18% were employees, staff of the school district, 58% are parents, and the remainder were other residents who didn't fit into those two categories. As you can tell, if 76% of respondents are either staff or parents, that means that those two groups are oversampled compared to the rest of the population. Of the people who took the survey, 2/3 of them did vote in the referendum, including 87% of self-identified employees, which is a very, very high number. The number one reason that people said they did not vote was concerns about COVID-19. Over half of those who didn't vote said it was the pandemic. The other key answers were they forgot, they were gone on business, they didn't know how to vote early, or the very honest, I just wasn't interested in the referendum. We asked about whether or not the district did a good job of providing information. 60% said yes. Not surprisingly, only 35% of referendum opponents said yes, that the district did a good job. That is often a problem in school districts, is that people who oppose the referendum state one of the core reasons why is they were unable to get information. It almost doesn't matter how many mailings you put out, how strong your website is or whatever, opponents tend to gravitate to that argument. In terms of support for the referendum, of the people who took the survey and who voted in the referendum election, 71% supported, 29% opposed. That means we've got an oversample of supporters of the referendum. 90% of employees stated that they supported the referendum, 72% of parents, and with the other residents, it was 50-50. We asked the supporters whether they would support another referendum if the district went forward. 98% said yes. That's a pretty important statistic here. Of the opponents, 59% said they want a more affordable plan. 18% said they want their questions answered. 14% are worried about going forward with either COVID-19 or the economy. Those are fairly typical answers, I would say, particularly the idea that half of opponents want a more affordable plan. Everybody wants a more affordable plan in the end. And for some people, and I think we talked about this very early on in our work on this referendum, some people simply, as much as they may like the local school district, you're not going to give them a price point that they support. Now, if you take the 2/3 who said they voted in the referendum and the 71% of those who said they supported the referendum, that makes up 48% of respondents. So basically half of respondents voted and voted yes. Now let's talk about the elements of the plan. 87% agree you need a plan to improve your aging elementary schools. Now go back to what I just said. 48% voted and voted yes in the referendum, but 87% said we need a plan. That's a pretty good sign for the district that you're off on the right track. Not that you found the wrong plan, but rather for a variety of reasons, either people did not vote yes on this plan or they did not vote at all. Note that 67% of people who self-identified themselves as voting against the referendum still said you need a plan for your aging elementary schools. So you're doing the right thing. And again, there's reasons why the April referendum didn't work, but it wasn't that you had identified the wrong area for the plan. We asked whether grade reconfiguration would be good for students. 88% agreed that it would be. Again, only 48% voted yes in the referendum, so that's a pretty large gap there between the people who agree we should have grade reconfiguration and the yes vote. And 65% of referendum opponents agree we need grade reconfiguration. I want to take a step back. One of the things we talked about when you did the school perception survey was that the number one question that decided whether people would vote yes or no in the referendum was whether or not they believed grade reconfiguration was needed. 71% of those who said we need grade reconfiguration said, yes, I will vote, I will support the referendum. Only 8% of those who said we don't need grade reconfiguration were supporters of the referendum. We found those totals to be very close in the actual results out of April. 78% of people who identified themselves as believers in grade reconfigurations were yes voters on the referendum. 16% of people who didn't believe we need grade reconfiguration voted yes. The more you can emphasize the grade reconfiguration problem and why it's advantageous to students to reconfigure the grades, the more likely you are to bring along additional voters in the future. That was a long explanation, but the fundamental point is that when you get people to agree that grade reconfiguration is necessary, you are overwhelmingly more likely to get them to vote yes on a referendum. Two other areas. Should the district invest in better security and safety for the campuses? 83% agree that we should. What should we do with the Fine Arts Center? Overall, 58% said we should replace it, 28% said renovate, and 14% said leave it alone. But of the people who identified themselves as having voted against the referendum in April, only 16% supported replacing the Fine Arts Center. 51% those said renovate, a third said leave it alone. You also received far stronger support among employees than you did parents in terms of replacing the Fine Arts Center. That's going to take a little bit more communication in the future if you want to put the Fine Arts Center up either as a separate question or embedded in a main question. There's a pretty significant gap there in terms of their understanding. In terms of a future referendum, mail was the most popular way to receive information, followed by email, newspaper, radio, and then of the volunteered answers, they said Facebook and social media. When we asked whether or not we should hold another referendum, only 10% said no, I don't want one at all. That means there were a number of referendum opponents who agreed we should have another one. Of the dates we gave them, the plurality went to November 2020 with 29%. 23% said November 2021, and there are a whole bunch of answers in between. But it's important to note that staff and parents, which are your largest group of supporters, lean towards going earlier, either in November 2020 or February 2021. Other residents, those who aren't either staff or parents, lean towards November 2021 or not going forward at all. That was a pretty quick summary, and I can get additional information from the survey as needed, but I'll also ready to answer any questions right now if you have any.
Todd, this is Joe, and I guess I'll just say some feedback from the community members that I had feedback with was I think a lot of them wanted to vote, or maybe were going to vote yes, but just felt like there was nothing for them to see, view, touch, look at, that it was asking for 60 million for a elementary, but really didn't see a blueprint, so to speak, or what that is going to look like. And, we tried to explain to them that, we were just trying to make sure we get the funding, we'd come up with that later. And surprisingly, a lot of people just thought we were putting the horse before the cart, so to speak, and asking for the money with no plan. What have you done in the past? Stuff like that.
Well, that's a good point to bring up. We do hear that in some school districts, and the problem, of course, is that to invest a significant amount of money in design is hard for a school district. You're talking about, certainly a couple $1 million that have to be spent. So instead, what we do is that we will do some architect's drawings, just some initial look at what some of the options are, knowing that we want to reserve the ability to have design teams work on the specifics of the project once it's approved, and there's adequate money to be used for engineering and other types of design work. I would also say, though, that I think we were partially hurt, Joe, to be fair. As distant learning began, we had a really good core vote yes group, made up a lot of teachers and parents. Both Dr. Heller and I were there for the first organizational meeting. Mike was there also, very energetic. They did a great first round of phone calling. And then guess what? They're focused on their kids and the distant learning process and trying to make sure the education happens. And the second round of phone calling just basically fell apart. And so now, if people are getting a little bit of information on the referendum and you're getting closer and closer and you have to accelerate that, we weren't able to accelerate it in this particular election. And so I think the combination of People wanted more visuals, more information about the specifics of the plan, and the fact that it was difficult for the Vote Yes team to keep consistently campaigning. I would say those two together are a pretty good summary of what happened beyond just people being scared of COVID-19.
What do you think about people that didn't vote because they were worried about the financial impact of COVID-19? I mean, one of the things like the promoter's remorse that I had after the thing failed was, we didn't even tell these voters that if they vote yes, they're not going to pay these taxes until this building is up and built, right? I mean, so what do you think about that thought process and how that might have affected the thing?
Yeah, well, and for in your case, it clearly it was a factor in people voting no. But then in May, really in the heart of the recession, 3 other school districts approved their plans, including, as I say, Morrow, which was basically a $28 per month cost to the average taxpayer. So, I mean, these are still value equations. And I think, Joe's initial feedback probably helps explain why people didn't understand the value. I also think that people are going to see more value in schools over the next year or two as they come to appreciate the importance of teacher direct contact with kids. But having said that, you will always have a group of people who are going to be concerned about next year. Farmers in particular are always going to be concerned about, are we going to have a good enough year next year that I can continue to afford this tax impact? And it's just it's always a hard argument to deal with. And it's a fair concern that people have.
Sure.
Todd, final comment. Sorry, you alluded to this earlier about the Fine Arts Center. I was halfway surprised, but not thoroughly, about the amount of people that don't see the need for it or that it doesn't need to be repaired. In your expertise, I mean, is that something, I know you said that we have to decide as a board whether we want to package that in as to say we go back to an elementary and don't even break that out. Were you surprised by the numbers on that? I guess, given what you've seen of that Fine Arts Center?
I tell you, I had, once the COVID-19 pandemic hit, I had pretty good hope you could hold off on question 1 and pass it, but I didn't think you were going to pass the Fine Arts Center. At that point, that feels more like a want and not a need. And in fact, of the people who self-identified themselves as supporters, a quarter of them didn't support the Fine Arts Center. So you had a pretty big drop-off there in your yes votes. I think it's going to take convincing people that you need to have an elementary school plan. Almost 90% are there. Convince them you need grade reconfiguration. Almost 90% are there. They're not there right now on the replacement of the Fine Arts Center. You have a thin majority there, and that's largely driven by staff. So I think you may need a little bit more time with that. That doesn't mean you don't put it on the next time you put something up, but you're more ready to pass the elementary school. That's true.
So when you say 90% are there, that's 90% of the people who responded to the survey, which is majority people who voted in favor of the referendum, which is the minority, correct?
Yes, but even 2/3 of self-identified referendum supporters said you need a plan to improve the elementary schools, and 2/3 said you need grade reconfiguration. So, I mean, the good news is that the community understands the problem. That's a success here. Now the question is, how do you put the right plan in front of them or convince them of the value of the plan you've already adopted? Okay, with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy down the road to answer any other questions you have.
Thank you, Todd, for spending some time with us.
Thanks, Todd.
We're at
That will be one of the discussion items on the agenda, both for the retreat and for the end of year meeting as well.
Okay, thank you. 3.1. Approve resolution for membership in the MSHSL. Annually, the board must go through the training video, why we play, and adopt the resolution to renew membership in the Minnesota State High School League. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Maggie Kluver, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Maggie. Does anybody want a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. Roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. Thank you for your votes, and we'll move on here. 3.2, approve health insurance premiums. Annually, once the service co-op releases the premium rates for the coming year, the board must approve or accept the premium. Under the renewal, the district's premiums increased by 3% from the current year to the 2020-21 school year. So you'll see the rates: singles $665, families $1,793, the HSA 2400 to 4800 deductible. The 500 CMM is single is $745. The family is $2,007. And the minimum value plan single is $504.50 and family $1,359.50. Renewal rates single $685. Family is $1,847 for the 2,400, 4,800 deductibles, and the HSA compatible 1,632, 723.50, and 1,948. Single 500 CMM, $767.50, and family is $2,067.50. Minimum value plans are singles are $519.50, and a family is $1,450. Premiums listed above are all full costs of the plan. The employee share of the cost depends on the employee group's contract employment agreement. The difference in cost is taken as a payroll deduction. You want to make a motion to accept the premium?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Was that Maggie?
Yes.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
Darren, and I'm an aye. We passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Approval of contract for 2021 yearbooks. Courtney Bickney has negotiated a contract with the Walter Publishing Company for the 2020-21 yearbook agreement. This includes Montevideo Senior High, Middle School, and Ramsey Sanford. Does anyone want to make a motion to accept the contract?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
Darren is an aye. student fees and charges and admission prices. They were sent in our information. The attached student fees and charges reflected the changes. Including the change of adult meal prices from $3.75 to $3.85, for adult lunch from $1.80 to $1.90, and for adult breakfast.
I'll make a motion to accept those price increases.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you very much. So our roll call vote. We'll start. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. So let's see here. 3.5, staff payroll deductions. And there was sent in our packet of information. Does anybody want to make a motion to approve the list of staff members for salary reductions for absences not covered in the master agreement?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. We got a second.
Second.
Thank you, Andrew. And roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. So now 3.6, property liability, student accident insurance, and work comp insurance rates. Does anybody want to make a motion to accept the insurance quotes for the 2020-21 insurance rates?
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Our roll call vote again. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
Darren is an aye. And I'm guessing, Dr. Heller, you researched the insurance rates?
Yes, we actually did receive other bids for our liability insurance and property insurance, and all of the other bids we received were considerably higher.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, does anybody have any questions or comments? If not, I'll have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Maggie. Oh, sorry.
Maggie, that's fine. Joe, you second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Okay, any further discussion? If not, we'll do a roll call vote. Andrew.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Maggie.
Aye.
And Darren is an aye. Thank you for putting up with my antics on the